we have covered types 1 through 6. Sevens are striving to feel excited. That is the thing that makes a seven. That striving to feel excited comes from the awareness to action framework. We are going to be talking about some of the awareness to action takes on a type 7 according to their framework and their model. And then I have added in some other things from other Enneagram philosophies that you'll hear about as well, just to give some additional insights, points of reflection, potential questions for our type 7s out there. So what striving to feel excited might look like? Well, we have a core motive and core logic for our type 7s being having a desire to experience freedom, options, and possibilities, and ideally positive possibilities. I think last time when we talked about our type 6, they spend a lot of time thinking what might go wrong. Our type 7s also spend a lot of time in the future, but most of the times it's what might go right. What are the positive possibilities? When we do our workshop for the type 7, the intro GIF to the 7 is the Braveheart GIF where he's, Mel Gibson is saying freedom on the back of this horse. And that is kind of the vibe of the 7. It is, I want to have options. I don't want anybody to tell me what to do. I don't want to have this pressure of routine and structure. And we're going to come back to that. But that freedom, that flexibility is core to a type 7. They want to avoid feeling trapped, limited, bored, stuck in mundane tasks at all costs. So this is another one that we have talked about where I think 4s and 7s have a lot more in common than I think we might initially think. 4, 5s, and 7s are the least common type that I see in the cultures that I work a lot with, the clients that I work a lot with, which is a lot of corporate America. I will see more of them in the startup types of businesses. If I'm working with a sales team or a marketing team, there tends to be a couple more, but you can start to see, okay, if there's a, work in the office mandate, there's very strict working hours, you can kind of start to see like, okay, a 7 could do it, but why it may not be the most ideal working environment for them, and why you might see them in more, in roles more like sales, where maybe they have the ability to have a little bit more flexibility with their schedule. It's like, here's my goal. Don't tell me how to get there. I'll get there. Let me have the freedom to get there, but just give me the goal and then let me do it how I want to do it. They do look ahead to what's next. They get excited about new ideas, new opportunities, new experiences. We talk about how each type tends to think about navigate change. And out of all the types, type 7 tends to be the one that, not that you want anything bad to happen, but a lot of times it's, I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know what to expect, but something new is coming. I'm excited. There's something new coming. Where for other types like the 6, many other types, it's like, oh my gosh, that uncertainty can be very unnerving. And, 7s can feel that too, for sure. But there is just some excitement about newness. And sometimes there is excitement in the uncertainty. What might happen? That goes back to that potential and possibility. And then they also want to avoid uncomfortable feelings at all costs. So a lot of times they will reframe their, discomfort or others' discomfort or uncomfortable, difficult conversations, difficult feelings to something more positive. Well, look on the bright side. Everything happens for a reason. Your dog died, you can get another one, and it's like, okay, love that positive vibes only. However, at some point it can start to feel a little dismissive. So that'll be one thing that our type 7s need to watch out for. Strengths in the workplace, they bring high energy, they bring optimism, they bring enthusiasm. They're getting everybody on board with their new idea, the new initiative, the holiday party, rallying around a common cause, getting people maybe to see maybe something bad happen, maybe something, there's a lot of stress, your seven's kind of going to come in and say, hey, this is happening, but we could look at it like this, or we can think about it like this. And they can just kind of change the vibe, the tone of a room. And it can be really inspiring, exciting to be around our type sevens. They tend to be very creative thinkers. They are fast idea generators. They love a good brainstorm, get a whiteboard going on in here. They tend to be very adaptable, like we were talking about with change, flexible, kind of go with the flow, but not necessarily sit back and just kind of let things happen. But it's like, okay, this is happening. Sure, I can get excited. I can move. I can take action in that direction. Plans change last minute. Okay, that's okay. I'm not bothered by a tweak in the agenda. Whereas some people, that might be incredibly frustrating. So that can be a potential friction point between coworkers, just even understanding how each other thinks about and navigates last minute changes, changes to plans, changes to meetings, that sort of thing. And then they are very future oriented. We talk about our threes, our sevens, our eights are in what some Enneagram models refer to as the assertive stance. They want to go far, they want to go fast. Sevens have the belief that and the positive thinking that they're going to be able to make it happen. The world is their oyster. Leap in the net will appear type of energy that our threes and eights also tend to have. And they can be really great at motivating teams and seeing opportunity in change, in maybe a restructure, a merger, whatever type of a new initiative. Lots of things can change in a business, inside an organization, and sevens can be really great at harnessing the opportunity that might occur during those changes. Now, when these strengths get overused, which sometimes people might call opportunities for growth, but it's that same energy. It's just in the moment or with a specific person, it's dialed up a little too high. So some of their overused strengths with that positivity overuse can be avoiding difficult emotions or uncomfortable conversations. And we need to have that conflict to grow, to get things done, to address needed issues rather than just dance around them or try to do the sandwich method, focus on all the good. It's like, well, we really need to talk about this difficult thing. And that can be hard for a seven to sit and listen and to not try to reframe. They can overcommit and under follow through with all those ideas. They can jump into the next idea before finishing the current one, which can be really frustrating for themselves. And I know other people can get really frustrated with the sevens doing those sort of things. And then, it is great to have that it'll all work out, positive mindset. But sometimes our sevens might completely disregard the risk, not even want to take it into consideration or minimize it or the consequences so that they can kind of pursue that exciting idea without thinking about the whole thing, only getting focused on the good, the exciting things about it, but maybe not considering the cost or the time or potential risks going into it. So those are some things our sevens might have to self-manage or might need some help managing and navigating in the workplace. Some specifics around how this type shows up in the workplace. I would say I hear that a lot of sevens love a fast-paced environment where things are changing, where they have an opportunity to work on different projects. Maybe they're wearing multiple hats. Again, for some people, that could be really stressful, but for a seven, it might be just the thing that they need. Again, why they could thrive in a startup where things change on a dime. There's not a lot of processes or procedures. You're kind of working on the fly. You're doing multiple jobs. And it does move really fast. So whether that's startup or an internal department. Sevens tend to be really great in that area. They can get really energized by brainstorming. I always talked about this love a good whiteboard session. They love to talk about creative, innovative ideas, new initiatives, making plans for the future that are exciting. And they really have a hard time with rigidity, a lot of structure, excessive routine, and they are going to struggle under a manager that has a tendency to micromanage. They will just struggle. And then they will have to find a way to channel some of that structure and routine and consistency so that all of these exciting ideas can be brought to life, because without it, in the long term, they may very well struggle with execution or and actually accomplishing things. Like, it's one thing to get everybody excited, it's one thing to jump into a new project, but your organization, your manager, your team as a seven is probably they are counting on you to complete it. Get excited, get everybody on board, go, jump into it. And you got to finish it. And so that'll be something that can be a struggle for our type sevens. And then anything that is really detail heavy tasks, slowing down to maybe check for typos before they turn in a document or do a presentation. Will be difficult. Not thinking through, pitching a new idea, but forgetting some of the important details. So, not to say that they can't do it, but just knowing that probably isn't going to be one of your top three strengths as a seven. And so, where can you either, if you need to, practice doing more of that, learn the skills you need, put in, routines to help you do that, or find people on your team to kind of help you, fill the gaps, support you support them in different ways. The leadership style of the type seven, according to the awareness to action model, is called the enthusiast. So they bring a lot of vision, a lot of momentum, a lot of just really contagious, exciting energy. They can be such fun and motivating leaders to work with. They encourage creativity from other people. They encourage other people to think out of the box, to dream about the possibilities, to have this big picture thinking. And they can really help teams move forward, especially in those uncertain times or when there is a season of change. The challenge, no surprise, is going to be unintentionally overwhelming their teams with all these new exciting ideas and initiatives, or not providing the needed details, or just details that some of their team members may very well need. They may just be so big picture that some of the team members that they're leading need a little bit more understanding, sources, information, data, analysis, whatever it might be, in order for them to comfortably move forward or to be more effective in their role. So that'll be something for the type seven leaders to lean into and then also be aware of. At work, I hear a lot of pet peeves as around feeling boxed in, deferring to this is the way we've always done it. Somebody who's not open to trying new things, being overly restrictive, feeling like their team or the company culture is excessively pessimistic or negative, can be a huge pet peeve. Somebody's saying, well, we tried, it just, it's not going to work out, or that's not going to be a good move for us. A seven's going to say, well, let's at least try. Like, what might happen if we thought about this in a different way? Long meetings can be really hard for sevens with no movement or outcome, which I think for many other types that can be a struggle as well. Sevens, though, can feel like they're not focused on the efficiency necessarily. They can be, but not necessarily. Like a three is like, we got a hard start, hard stop. Let's stick to the agenda. A seven might be a little bit more comfortable going off topic, maybe running a little behind. If it's like we're we're jiving, we're talking about new ideas, we're moving forward, we're getting new plans in place, that can feel really exciting. So if the meeting goes a little long in that situation, it's gonna be okay. But it's just when it's just, yeah, it's like what we're talking about things, but where's the action? Sevens are very action oriented, along with those threes, eights, and a lot of times the ones as well. And then they can feel a little perturbed when it feels, and this may not be the case, but when it feels like, oh my gosh, we're just dwelling on problems and no solutions. It can also be a pet peeve for them to have exciting, maybe crazy ideas that get shut down immediately. And so, what I hear from a lot of sevens is like, yeah, sometimes I'll throw out some crazy ideas, but just let me just let it sit there for the day, like let me sleep on it before you completely shut me down or start, asking me to come up with the details. I'm probably going to realize very shortly after I throw that out there that I don't have time. That's actually not a great idea. But let me get to it before you just immediately shut it down. Um, they say in the workplace the things that they prefer or really appreciate is around autonomy and flexibility. We will talk about this a little bit more in the type 8, but both sevens and eights and fives too really have a sensitivity to autonomy, and they want to be left to be able to figure things out on their own, do it how they want to do. Just give me the goal, tell me what needs to be done, and then let me loose. And eights might be a little bit more direct with somebody who is trying to micromanage them, trying to give them a step-by-step plan, and might have a little bit more assertive of a pushback. And so, they might kind of rebel against that status quo in the typical kind of maverick rebellion way. Whereas a seven might also rebel, but what they can have a tendency to do is come to that with like a soft rebellion, meaning rather than be seen as more aggressive or direct communication, they might do something like make friends with their manager so that they don't have to do what everybody else says, or they're going to get a little bit more leniency. They're going to have a little bit more flexibility with when they can come into the office or when they can work from home because I've made friends with my manager. Now I have this autonomy. So just kind of interesting relationship to autonomy or sensitivity to autonomy, being told what to do. That sort of thing. They appreciate variety and opportunities to explore ideas. So, this might be if there is somebody on the team that is meeting their goals, is getting their work done, and then there's an opportunity to join a committee or work on a completely different type of project just to add that variety, could be really fulfilling and rewarding for our type sevens. They love that positive, forward thinking communication. Sure, let's give it a try. Why not versus why, or this is the way we've always done it. And then have structure, but have some freedom and some options within that structure, not just endless rules, over excessive processes and procedures. When we talk about giving feedback to a type 7, because we all have our stuff, we're all going to have to be given feedback either by one of our peers, maybe a client, maybe our boss. So if you happen to be working with a type 7 and you need to share some feedback, you keep it direct. Keep it honest and as much as possible solution focused. They're gonna respond well to that. Avoid shaming or a lot of emotional heaviness. Frame the free feedback around how it is going to impact others, their ability to work on new and exciting things, how it might impact the outcomes, and then do what you can to kind of balance freedom and that flexibility within their work projects, their work schedule, their routines, but also giving them very clear expectations. Now, as a seven, we don't always want to hear that because we just think, oh, I think we all can have a tendency to say, oh, well, there's not a lot for me to work on, but we all have our things, as I've said. So for a seven, think about whatever somebody's saying and really just sit with it as much as you can. Stay present rather than trying to reframe it. Our sevens are great at reframing the positive. We have talked before about how the type threes have a little PR agency inside of them where they can kind of reframe anything to make it seem like actually I meant for this to happen. I'm striving to feel outstanding as a type three. So I'm going to make sure that that image stays. And so I'm going to have to reframe. Put a little spin on this, put a little spin on that. We're in the red. Well, listen, it's actually okay. So sevens can do that a little bit as well. But again, it's coming from a place of, yeah, I think sevens would love to be outstanding as well. They want to do a good job. They want to be successful. They're incredibly driven. They can make great leaders. They can make great members of a team. And they can get really uncomfortable difficult situations or maybe what isn't positive. I don't even want to say it's negative feedback, but just a critique or a criticism, they might immediately want to kind of reframe that to the positive, similar to how the three might do that. For our sevens, looking at, okay, this is uncomfortable. I'm getting this feedback, or we're having a hard time. This meeting, we're having some difficult conversations in here. So rather than making a joke, doing something to reframe, do what you can to just sit with that discomfort. Really listen, pay attention. Don't try to positive vibes only it away. And you might have to do something like wiggle your toes in the meeting or while you're getting that feedback, but just do what you can not to run away from it. And then looking for ways to commit to your goals, your routine, whatever the feedback is that you're getting. Look for ways to follow through with it and not just get excited about the idea or the new direction or the new routine or whatever it might be. Look and see, okay, how can I actually follow through with this and not just get excited about this feedback? Because you might be getting some really great feedback that this doesn't just have to be negative. And so you might get all hyped, but what are you going to do with it? Right? What are you going to do with it? So commit to the follow through, not just the enthusiasm as a type seven. Now, we have talked with each of these how, though, there can be different expressions of a type seven, and there can be all kinds of different ways that a seven energy is expressed based on country of origin, childhood, socioeconomic status, race, gender, culture, all kinds of different things are going to impact that. We are really going to keep it in the Enneagram lane though. And so the other thing that we can do to get even a layer deeper though in understanding the different ways that seven is expressed is when we look at those instinctual biases. And for our sevens, we have the preserving seven, we have the navigating seven, and the transmitting seven. And our preserving seven, I think more than any of the other types, could be sometimes mistyped as a type one. And so this is almost the opposite energy coming together. This is not the textbook seven that you most likely are reading about. So this can be difficult to type yourself. So if you are stuck between, am I a seven or am I a three? Am I a seven or am I a two? Some of these instinctual biases, how they overlap, might be factoring into that. And so you'll have to think, not so much about the behavior when we're looking at the type, what's my core motive? And then you do want to look at the behavior when you look at how it is expressed. So our preserving sevens, you're going to see them being a little bit more practical when it comes to their enjoyment, their comfort. They're going to have this excitement and kind of not getting into uncomfortable situations, being satisfied with life, looking for ways to sustain that. How can I sustain my excitement, this striving to feel excited? And so there might be a little bit more grounded, a little bit more pragmatic than the stereotypical type seven. So this is something to dig into a little bit more if you feel like, yeah, I really relate to the striving to feel excited, but my behaviors are maybe a little bit more like a three, like a one, where I am able to I'm a little bit more comfortable with routine. Maybe I'm a little less outgoing. Maybe I like my home. I like to find the excitement in the decor in my house, what sort of wallpaper, what sort of couch, what sort of patio furniture, rather than what, country am I going to visit. So that is kind of the one out of all of these that you're almost pairing two very different energies. But so just sharing that if you happen to be struggling with your typing there. Our navigating sevens, this is one where you might mistype as a type two. So navigating really focused on group dynamics, understanding hierarchy, role clarity, focused on understanding, the body language, the unspoken messages coming from a group. So when you overlay the navigating with the striving to feel excited, you are energized. You're finding that excitement in your group experiences, in your relationships, maybe in shared adventures. And you might be the social connector, the morale booster, like making sure everybody's having a good time at the party, at the company meet, whatever it might be. And so you're using that excitement. You're finding the excitement in those group dynamics, where the seven, the preserving seven, is finding that excitement in the comfort, the nesting, the managing of their resources at home or at work. And then our transmitting seven, our transmitters in general, they want to put a dent in the universe. Leaving a legacy is important, going far, going fast. So this is probably the most stereotypical seven out of all of them. This one has big energy, bold ideas. They can be very charismatic. They can be very magnetic when they walk into a room. These are oftentimes your visionary leaders. So they are getting that excitement from thinking about their legacy. What meaningful work can they do? These are your entrepreneurs a lot of times, and they can look more like the type three or the type eight, more so than the other two types. So I like to cover this just because I think it gives us some additional understanding of ourselves and potentially our coworkers. And then these instinctual biases can be really helpful if we are in the beginning of our typing journey and we're really stuck between a couple. There may be something here. So, that might give you some things to reflect on, some places to dig into a little bit deeper. So for our growth paths for our type seven, they are connected to the type five and the type one. So the arrow to the five is going to bring depth and focus. That is the type that they tend to neglect the most, where the type fives are comfortable with that solitude, with silence, slowing down. They are not impulsive decision makers. They are not necessarily fast talkers. And so, what can you do as a seven to enhance striving to feel excited, but pull in some of the strengths of the five? So, slowing down, deepening one idea at a time. So, still having the ability to explore new ideas, but going deep with one or maybe two rather than 10 or 20 new ideas at one time. And then looking at ways that you can build that excitement and still have all those opportunities and forward movement with by building expertise instead of just chasing novelty or what's kind of trendy or exciting in that moment. So looking for ways to sustain that excitement. The other opportunity for growth is around the type one. Sometimes this is known as their stress era, where they can take on some of those tendencies of a type one and get actually a little rigid, a little pessimistic. This wasn't as fun as I thought it was going to be. But there's also a lot of growth and enhancement that they can pull from the type one strengths, such as discipline and follow through. So, committing to structure that supports the execution of all those exciting ideas, and then finishing what you start, even when the excitement fades, can be some things that help you continue to bring those exciting ideas to life and to help you be successful in the workplace. So, as we close out our type 7 overview of how they show up at work, some things that you can experiment with if you are a type 7 is to choose one idea to fully complete before starting another. This is going to be really hard. And like we just talked about with the type 1, finishing what you started, even when the excitement fades, that can be really hard. But changing that narrative to, I want to feel exciting, but it can feel exciting when I finish something, not just when something's starting. Can be a helpful thing to kind of reframe. You want to sit with some uncomfortable feelings, allow there to be some silence, allow there to be some discomfort. 60 seconds, 90 seconds before you jump into reframing it. So just be cautious of how often you do that. And once you start paying attention, you might realize as a 7 just how often you do that, and how dismissive it can feel to the other person who might be sharing a difficult situation, or it can feel like you're not a good team member because you're unwilling to see the whole picture or face reality or whatever that might be. So be aware of that, and then schedule some open time, some white space, instead of filling every moment on your calendar with a work project or your, at home social events. And that's kind of tapping into that 5, where you have the space and the silence and the solitude to bring in some of that wisdom and that thoughtfulness. But that's not your first choice. I know. As a fellow 7, I know that's not going to be your first choice, but there is a lot of power, a lot of good that can come from being still, being quiet, and really giving yourself that time, that space, that quiet to think about, what do I really want to pursue? What really is important to me? Not just where I'm kind of getting pulled in all these different directions based on how exciting it feels in the moment. And then if you happen to work with a type 7, we talked about this, channel their ideas as much as possible into clear priorities. So before you just shut it down, we can't do that. Is there a way to turn it into a goal? Give them a new, stretch goal, a bonus project. Can they help to be on a committee? What sort of, how can you turn those ideas into something that can help the team, you, the business, and then giving them those clear priorities so they know, hey, that 1, 2, 3, this is all that you got to focus on this year, rather than them maybe struggling to find the priorities because of whatever new exciting thing comes their way. Letting them brainstorm, then helping them execute. Don't jump into how would this work? How are we going to pay for this? We don't have the research. Just it'll flush out. Most of the time, 7s are going to flush it out. And you're going to build so much more trust and rapport if you just allow them to get there themselves. Of course, sometimes that might not always be possible, but as much as possible. And then don't confuse optimism with lack of care. A lot of times most of the time they care very deeply, and they're not spinning it um, because they just don't want to feel uncomfortable sometimes. But a lot of times, sevens are they deeply care about the team, and they deeply care about the morale of the team. And so sometimes it can feel like, hey, it's on me to make sure that we're keeping the vibe up, that people are having fun, that we're staying positive, that nobody's getting left behind, that everybody's doing okay. And so to some people that might seem, listen, you're out of touch with reality, or this is unrealistic optimism. And a seven might see it as, I'm just caring for the morale, the momentum of the group, because I care about the group, not just myself. Things to think about if you are a seven or you're working with the seven. Our sevens, we have had some sevens feel like, I've heard them say, we get this reputation for being flaky. We can't commit. We can't, we can't follow things through. And absolutely, you can. Just honing that in, and then that radical optimism, that radical positivity at times can be just the thing that the team needs, the organization needs to get through something that probably is really challenging. And looking back on it, you might think, oh my gosh, we would have never started this had we known how hard it was going to be. But because of that sevens, no, we'll figure it out. Let's just move forward. We'll figure it out. It's all going to work out in the end. You can make some really incredible things happen as a type seven, for your team, for yourself, for the people around you. So don't get too hard on yourself. Be receptive to that feedback and some opportunities for growth, but also make sure that you lean into the strengths that you do have, and you use those, and you give yourself credit for the ability to see the potential and possibilities in situations and in other people. So with that, we will be looking to our type eights in the next episode, striving to feel powerful. So I hope that you will join us back for that one. These are things that we talk about in our standalone workshops, and then we have more time to get into the instinctual biases, how it shows up in communication, how it shows up in feedback, specific things to work on for growth in your career, on the team, as a leader. And so those are things that we'll talk about in our Enneagram workshop series. So if you are interested in seeing what we might be able to bring to your team in 2026, I'm going to invite you to look at our options over at enneagrammba.com and look at scheduling a kickoff workshop, or potentially a standalone workshop for your new year kickoff. Or we do have groups that are already starting to plan their summer retreats, their end of year potential company meetings, company retreats. So be thinking about that, and would love for you to consider how Enneagram MBA might be able to support you and your team in those situations. So with that, thank you for being here as always, and then we will see you in the next one.